Hey, it's Jared. I like to help people get the most out of their technology, and in this video we're going to be talking about some Mac productivity tips. Now, if you've been an Apple user for any period of time, you've probably had some breakthroughs in figuring out some things that definitely make the experience faster and more productive for you, but you probably also have some frustrations. And so in this video, we're going to start with some fundamentals and work our way towards some really useful tips that can help you become more productive. So feel free to use the timestamps down in the description. Now, before we dive in, I want to quickly mention that I have an ultimate Apple productivity guide, and that course is available linked in the description below. But we're going to jump in starting with our peripherals. On my desk here, I have a keyboard, a mouse, and a trackpad. And we're going to talk about some trackpad basics because the trackpad is extremely useful. Whether you use it in a setup like I do, or you just have the trackpad only, maybe you're on a laptop and you have the trackpad on your keyboard, or you're on an iPad, or perhaps you have an Apple trackpad and you don't use a mouse. Let's first talk about some of those trackpad essentials. Now, if you're coming from a Windows environment, typically you're used to just being able to tap on the trackpad, but you've realized that on a Mac, you actually have to physically push down and perform a click. Now, you don't have to be stuck with that. If you prefer a tap to click instead of a push down click to tap, I guess, then you can actually change that. Let's go and open up our system settings. You can do that by hitting Command Space to open Spotlight and just typing in settings, and that will open up the settings app. Now, in the settings app, there are mouse and trackpad settings down at the bottom. And this is, if you're on a laptop as well, you'll see the trackpad settings. Now, we have here an option called tap to click with one finger. Now, if I press this and enable this, I can now tap on the trackpad without clicking, and it's performing an actual click. Now, personally, I end up disabling this because I'll have my hand near the trackpad and I prefer the physical click, which is then a confirmation that I actually wanted to perform a click. I find that to be a better option for me. But if you like the just basic tap, you prefer that, maybe because of muscle memory, that can be a thing. If the muscle memory is causing an issue, then go ahead and enable that. It's going to make things much easier for you. So you can enable that by toggling the box or toggling it off. Now, another feature of both the mouse and the trackpad is a right click. We're used to right clicks. You probably come accustomed to right clicking, and on a Mac, the right click is not enabled by default. So there is a way to get a right click, which is to hold down the control and click. So holding down the control on the keyboard and then clicking. But that is an additional step and might not necessarily be a step that you want to take every single time. So how do you change that? Well, let's open that settings menu back up again, and we're here on the trackpad setting. You can see that secondary click on the trackpad is set to click with two fingers. And with secondary click off, two finger clicks do nothing different than one finger. So if I'm clicking one finger, nothing different here. But if I enable secondary click with two fingers, then when I click with two fingers, I get a right click. And so on the trackpad, that's pretty useful because it's easy just to click with one finger, and then if you want the right click, click with two fingers. But if you have a Magic Mouse, you might also be wanting that functionality. On the Magic Mouse, if I just click with one finger, I'm getting a single click, but if I click off in the right-hand corner, I might want a right click. And you can see that I have a right click without hitting Control on the keyboard. So a right click. How did I make that happen? Well, I need to go into settings, and under mouse, I need to enable click right side. Now, this is going to be a Magic Mouse specific feature. If you have a third-party mouse, for example, I have this Logitech mouse here, which has a right and a left click built into it. Because it's basic functionality of this mouse, I'm not going to have to enable that feature. But on a Magic Mouse that comes with most Macs, or perhaps you purchased one, you are going to need to enable secondary click on the right side. So they don't want to give it the name right click. They call it a secondary click. So that might be the confusing part is, well, what's a secondary click? Well, with the Mac, it is essentially a right click. So when we're on the desktop or when we're in a folder or something like that, or we have Safari opened or whatever application it is, and we want to right click on something, we can do that now with secondary click enabled. Now, another thing that's pretty slow out of the box on a Mac is scrolling the mouse across the screen. Now, one of the things that I love is that when you go fast, it makes the mouse much larger so it's easier to see. But the tracking speed can also be adjusted. While we're here on this mouse panel, typically it comes all the way over here, which is really slow, which means I have to drag the mouse and pick it up several times just to get it across the screen. Now, I don't like having to pick the mouse up and drag it all the way over just to get across the screen, so I make an adjustment to the tracking speed so that I can get all the way across the screen on the average width of a mouse pad, not too far. Obviously, if we go all the way over, this is really fast and it becomes really challenging to make small movements. But if we go maybe with, I'd say, I don't know, 50% is probably right here. So maybe this is 45% and this might be 35% or something like that. Somewhere in there is a good tracking speed. And then we also have that for the trackpad as well. We have tracking speed here. So how many times do I have to pick up my finger and drag it across the trackpad to get all the way across the screen? Now, I don't want it to be too fast because then it's very hard for me to make minute movements, little miniature movements with my finger so that I could find so that I can click on something. Chances are I'm probably going to make a mistake. So I want a tracking speed that's going to work for me. So let's talk about the keyboard. There is a lot that you can do with the keyboard, and perhaps you know some keyboard shortcuts like copy and paste and select all, some real basic ones that you learned from a long time ago. But there's a lot of different keyboard shortcuts that you can utilize to maneuver and get around your Mac without having to take your hand off of the keyboard and use the mouse or the trackpad. So we're going to look at a couple of those. But first, let's talk about navigating your Mac using keyboard navigation. Let's use that Command space to open up our system settings, and we'll just type in settings and open that up. And then in the search box, we're going to type in keyboard navigation. And then we'll want to make sure that keyboard navigation is enabled. So what keyboard navigation does essentially is it lets us navigate our Mac by using the tab and the shift tab. So you can see that I'm moving through different buttons and selections, and then if I hold down shift and tab, I can go backwards. Now this is super useful because a lot of times we are navigating our Mac and we have to take our mouse off and click on something and then go back to the keyboard and go back and forth, when it's really easy just to use the tab to get through different boxes. And this works on pretty much everything. So if I'm on a website here and I go ahead and hit tab, it takes me right down to the first available box that's there. Now there's only one box on that page, so let's go to my contact form and I can tab through these, or I can shift tab to go backwards. And so whether you're on a website filling out forms or navigating your Mac itself, using tab to navigate downward through different form fields, and then shift tab to navigate backwards should you need to, it's going to save you a bunch of time taking your hand off of the mouse. I mean, imagine using this with something like a spreadsheet or something like that. Could be very time saving. Now there's also lots of keyboard shortcuts that are available, and you can see all of those keyboard shortcuts right here. So let's go ahead and click on that. And you can see there are just tons of different keyboard shortcuts that are available to utilize your Mac. One that I use pretty often is screenshots. And so there's a variety of different screenshots that you can take, as you see here. So if I was to hit Command Shift and the number 4, you can see that turn my cursor into crosshairs, and then I can click and drag a box around something like that and then let off, and you'll see it made a screenshot of that. And so now I have a screenshot of what I just looked at. And it was very easy for me to do that with a keyboard shortcut. I didn't have to do anything fancy. I didn't have to use another application or something like that. I just simply used a keyboard shortcut, used my mouse, and boom, I had a screenshot. So there are basic keyboard shortcuts that most of us have learned already. So on my website here, if I am to click and then drag, I'm selecting text. That's pretty simple. Now, if I want to copy that to my clipboard so that I can paste it somewhere else, I can hit Command C on the keyboard, and you'll notice up here in the edit menu that it flashed when I did that. So it's flickering right now because I'm doing it a bunch of times. Under the edit menu, that is copy right here, and you can see there's paste and a variety of other keyboard shortcuts. on a Mac, especially up in the menu, you're always going to see the menu item, and then across from that, you'll see the keyboard shortcut for it. So that way you can easily learn the keyboard shortcuts for different software that you use to navigate it much faster. Now you'll notice that there isn't a paste option here, and that's because there's nothing for me to paste into. If I am in a text box here, and then I go back and look, now paste is available, and so I can use the Command V to paste that text into the box. And so it's very easy to take text from one place to another by using Command C for copy and Command V for paste. Now let's open a few different applications on our Mac, and things can get kind of crazy when you have a lot of different applications open. How do you navigate between these? Well, on the Mac it makes it pretty easy. You can hold down the command and hit tab, and you can see we get this application switcher. So I can easily switch between Safari and then over to Finder and then over to the TV app and whatever applications that I have open. Now, you probably also notice that I have some applications showing up over here on the left-hand side. That is because I have Stage Manager enabled. If you don't have that enabled, then you end up having all of your applications stacked on top of each other. Stage Manager is a way to kind of create a dock of your opened applications. It makes it a little easier to keep things out of the way. But if you are using it without Stage Manager, hold down Command and hit Tab, and then I can go between Safari. I can then go back between TV, and so Command Tab makes it really easy for me to switch between open applications without going to my mouse and clicking and trying to find whatever app it is that I was looking for. Now, another thing to be aware of, especially if you're a newer Mac user, is that by simply clicking on the red box of an application, it does not completely quit it. All it does is close the window. And you could end up having a lot of applications open and running in the background, which can use up a lot of your system resources. So when you're done with an application, the best thing to do is use the quit command, which is Command Q to quit the application, and then it goes away and it is completely closed. Alternatively, if you have multiple things open, so for example, if I had a couple of different websites open here and I wanted to close one of them, I could use the keyboard shortcut Command W to close a window, and that would close a window without closing everything. Of course, I can also do it again by hitting Command W and it would close the whole window. But notice that Safari is still open. Safari is not completely quit yet. I would then need to use the Command Q to quit Safari and get out of Safari the rest of the way. So we talked a little bit about jumping around between different windows. How do you manage all of those windows that you have on your screen? And with all of those applications opened and kind of stacked on top of each other, how do we navigate the system and see things better? Well, you can go full screen with an app. You can see there are 3 different icons up here, and if you mouse over the green one, you can see that there are some options here to move and resize it or to fill and arrange it. Now, these items for move and resize are going to keep it in the same window. But if I was to just simply click on this green button, it would go full screen, and now this application is full screen in its own window. And I have to mouse all the way up to the top here to get my controls back, so my menu and everything back, because this is a full screen app. This would be the best way to watch a movie or just be fully immersed in whatever application it is that you're using. But if you want to go back, you just simply click on the little green icon again and it takes it right back. Now we can also minimize applications to the dock as well. The dock is down here, and we can minimize things by clicking on the yellow minus icon, and you'll see it just zoomed down into the bottom corner of the dock. So we have it down there in the dock, and we can go ahead and minimize a few of these others as well. And now we have all of those minimized into the dock. So the dock is great because it's a place for us to put all of those applications while we might want to focus on one of our other applications on our desktop. But it's definitely kind of an old way of navigating things. So let's go ahead and pull all of these applications back up and go up to Control Center and choose Stage Manager. Now, you'll see what Stage Manager just did. It put applications in their own dock over on the left-hand side. And so if I want to navigate these, all I have to do is click on them, and you'll see that it just minimizes them over to the the dock and we can see them much better. I'll be honest, if I minimize them down into the application dock, I sometimes forget that they exist because they're down there, they're small, I'm not seeing them, and they might just go down there and spend the rest of their life. So I like using Stage Manager because I can focus on one application, and then if I need to jump over to another one, I can click, or if I need to jump over to another one, I can click, and if something's happening on that application, in the background. So for example, if there are some things moving on one of these applications, I can still see those things moving over there. So if something's taking place in one of those applications, I could jump over to it. I'm not necessarily missing out. And if the item was down in the dock, I just flat out wouldn't see it at all. So for those of you that want to be super productive, you might want to split screen some apps. And so for example, if I had my web browser and I wanted it opened, I can drag it over to the side and have it automatically resize and take up half of my screen. Now if I opened up the Notes application, so let's go ahead and open up Notes, and then I'm going to click on a new note and drag it over to the right side of the screen. Now it is taking up the right half of my screen, and if I pull out the browser and then dock that one again, you can see that I now have split screen apps. I have a nice web browser over here, and I have my Notes application over here. So that way, if I want to take some notes while I'm browsing the web, maybe I'm watching a informational YouTube video or a course and I want to be able to take notes, I have my content over on the left and I have my notes over on the right. And so it's a really great way to split screen apps and be more productive. You can even take it a step further, and I can drag this up towards the top right corner and put it into a quadrant. Instead of it taking up a full half of the screen, I could put it in a quadrant, and then I could pull over another application, for example the TV app, and drag that down into the bottom corner until I see the box change. Notice that the box is going half screen, and then as I get down to the bottom corner, it goes to the bottom right hand quadrant. And now I have a half screen app over here, and I have two quarter screen apps over here. So it's a really great way to organize and navigate the different windows that you might have opened on your Mac. So let's talk a little bit about Finder. Finder is where you manage all of your applications, your files, and everything that's stored on your computer. There are two things that we're going to take a look at. We're going to look at file structure and Finder views. And so with file structure, you can see that we have different sections over here, different folders essentially. We have our desktop, our documents, our downloads, our recents. We might have our iCloud drive if you're connected to that, maybe even some shared devices on your network, and all of these over here can be managed in the settings. So for example, if we look at our recents, we have our different files here, and I have those sorted by how recent those files have been accessed or changed. We have different ways that we can view our files. So if I want to click on this, I can see all of my files as icons, and they're sorted by how recent they are. We can also do that in a list, and so I can see a list of all of my files. We can view them in a column here as well. And for me, that's my favorite way of navigating everything. And then we also have this kind of carousel view as well, which allows us to view everything by little icons, and then we get a bigger preview of that, and then we get the information over here. So this is a much more visual view of everything. So I prefer the column view, so we're going to stick with that one. And with my column view, I like to be able to see not only the file itself, but the preview, and then if I scroll down a little bit, I can see additional information about that file. Now we can customize our sidebar over here, our Finder sidebar, by going up into the Finder menu and choosing Settings, and then from Settings, choosing Sidebar. Now in these settings, you'll see a whole bunch of options that we can favorite. You can see the check boxes are the ones that are displayed right now, but I can also add movies, music, pictures, and then I can add my home folder, my user home folder as well, that allows me to see all of those. But if I have them favorited here, I don't really need to also have that. There's also additional locations and servers and things that you can connect to, and some of these may vary depending on what other devices are connected to your network. but adding some of these favorites makes it easy to get to different folders on your computer quickly without having to navigate and click between too many different locations to try and find them. Now, under the General tab of Finder settings, you'll see New Finder Windows, Show, and then I have it set to Recents. That means that if I close my Finder window and then go and open a new Finder window, which I can do by going up to File and going to New Finder Window, or I can also hit Command N and get a new Finder window there as well. Because I have New Finder Window Show Recents, it's going to open up my Recents. And what's cool about that is it's going to show me all of the recent files that I've accessed on this computer, which I think is pretty useful. But if you would prefer to go to another folder, you can select from any folder that's on your computer or any location, and that would be the default for when you open a new Finder window. Now, another shortcut that I love to use when I have a Finder window opened is Command T. You can see that we can use tabs in a Finder window. So that means I can have one folder here and another folder over here. And what's great is you can drag and drop between these. So if I'm in my Recents folder here and I want to copy something over to my desktop, I can just click and drag and drop it here. And it's going to say, ask me if I want to move that file. I'll hit move. And then now I have that located on my desktop locally as well. And so when I click on my desktop, you can see that that file is in fact on my desktop. So let's talk a little bit about search and preview on the Mac. One of the features that I use constantly every single day is Spotlight Search. Spotlight Search can be activated by hitting Command and Spacebar, and it pulls up Spotlight Search, which I can use to open applications. So for example, I could just start typing the name of an application, and you'll see that it suggests the application and then gives some other suggestions as well. And so if I want to accept that, all I have to do is hit the Enter key and it opens it right up, which is amazing. Super fast to open up applications. But if I just hit Command Space and then start to search for a file, so for example, I start to search for All My Hope, which I know is a file because it's just right down there, you can see that it's showing me that that's a song. It's suggesting some searches. It's showing that I have Hope mentioned in some notes. It's showing the PDF file. And then it's also showing photos from apps as well, which these could be photos that I have saved in my Photos app or photos that are stored in other applications as well. So I've got like a meme, I've got some quotes from books and some random things that all mention hope because the Mac can actually read text from images. And then we're also getting shared links, and if I scroll down even further, I'll see mentions of those words in text messages. So Spotlight Search is great because it helps you find things extremely easy just by typing in a few words. Now, if you want to look at a file without opening it, you can do that really easily on a Mac. You just simply click on one of the files and then tap the spacebar, and it's going to give you a preview of that file. Now, I didn't have to open it. If I want to open it, I can do that. I can double click on the file and it's going to go ahead and open it in whatever application is the default for that. But if I don't want to open it because I'm not sure if it's the right file or I just want a quick peek at it, I can easily just hit the space bar. I can also go down to an audio file and I can hit the space bar and it's going to give me a preview of that. And if I had my sound turned on, we'd be getting audio. And this is going to work with pretty much every single file type. It's an excellent way of previewing something without having to open it up in the application. So the web browser that comes on your Mac, Safari, is pretty powerful. And what we have here when we open up Safari is our Safari home screen. And our Safari home screen can have all sorts of information. It can have favorites that we've saved, essentially bookmarks. It can show us a privacy report, which shows how many things it's blocked and protected us from. We have a reading list. We have tabs that are synced over from other devices, so tabs that might be open on my iPhone or my iPad. And then it's also showing us some suggestions as well, perhaps some links that came from text messages. So it's showing me links from different people that have text messaged me here, and I can edit this page. So if I want to change things out, I can click on edit and you can see the different checkboxes that are here. etc. So for example, recently closed tabs might be useful because you might need to go back to a tab that you recently had open, which a tab is essentially just a web page that you recently visited. Or maybe you don't want the privacy report to show up or the reading list. You can just unclick some of these boxes and these will go away. So for example, the suggestions I might not want on there, but I might want the recently closed tabs, which is great. So now I can customize this page and make it as useful as possible. And then I can choose use start page on all devices. And if I have that checked, then it's going to use this start page across all of my different devices as well. So sometimes a web page can be pretty distracting, and Safari has a built-in tool that makes it really easy for distraction-free reading. All you have to do when you're on a page is hit Command-Shift-R, and you're going to go into a distraction-free reader mode. This is great for those websites that have lots of ads and distracting things all over them. Makes it very easy for you to take away all of the distractions. And then to get the page back, you hit Command-Shift-R again, and it brings you back to the website. So Command-Shift-R takes you to the reader format, which makes most websites less distracting. Now, if you're like me, you end up with tons of Safari browser tabs opened. As you can see, I've got 3 different tabs opened, and I usually end up with a dozen tabs opened. It's very easy to be overwhelmed with the amount of tabs that you have on display. So it's easy to use a couple of keyboard shortcuts just to navigate these tabs. We can hit Command T to open a new tab very easily. We can hit Command W to close one of those tabs. And then you can hold down Command and use numbers to toggle between those. So notice I'm using Command and 1 to get to the first tab, 2, 3, and obviously this could be a little bit tricky if you have a dozen or more tabs opened, but it makes it really easy for you to navigate across multiple tabs without having to take your mouse and then navigate manually. I could just simply use the Command 1, 2, 3, 4 to navigate between those tabs. It's very easy and very fast. So I have to say one of the most recent and best features that Apple has added to the Mac is iPhone mirroring. Now, if I go down and click on this iPhone mirroring app, which means you have to be running Mac OS Sequoia or newer, you open it up and it says your iPhone on your Mac, click continue, and it's going to ask me to unlock my iPhone. Now, once I've unlocked my iPhone, I can have it show notifications from my phone on my computer. Now, I don't want those additional distractions, so I'm going to click Do Not Allow, and then I'll click Get Started. Now, iPhone mirroring is locked right now. I need to enter my password for my Mac to unlock this, and it's now connecting to my phone. Now, your phone is also going to have iOS 18 or newer on it in order for this to work. Now, I can easily navigate my phone and open up different applications just simply using my computer. So for example, if I want to go over and look at my widgets, I can do that. I can swipe down and get access to Spotlight Search on my phone, and I can open up something like YouTube just by typing that in. And open up YouTube, I can open up my Mail app or pretty much anything else that is available on my iPhone. I can always click the little bar down at the bottom or hit the escape key if need to. I could swipe over and view all of my applications. And it's just very easy to access anything that's on my iPhone right from my computer without having to pick up the iPhone. Now let's quickly talk about iCloud. iCloud allows you to sync specific things across all of your different Apple devices. I think this is extremely useful, and even though you can end up using up all of that storage space and having to purchase more, there's easy ways to manage all of that to make sure that you don't go overboard. But it's really nice to have certain files on your Mac, on your iPad, on your iPhone, and never have to worry about not having one of those devices with you so that you can access the files that you need. So hit Command space and then type in settings, and we're going to go to our settings. And we will then want to click on our Apple account up here, and then click on iCloud. Now you'll see here how much iCloud storage you have, and you can manage that here. You can also manage your iCloud subscription. You can see that I have 2 terabytes available, and I'm using a little over half of that. Now I can see all of the different applications that are syncing to iCloud. I can just click See All, and it's going to show me all of the different applications. A lot of them are Mac applications, and then if we scroll down, we might even see a few applications that are not Mac native, but are third-party applications that we've installed. Now we can also see our iCloud features of our plan right here. I have a family plan, and so I have family members on my iCloud plan as well, which is why we're using up quite a bit of storage. But it's also showing me what is using storage, which makes it really easy for me to identify things that are clogging up my iCloud storage. For example, if I have a lot of stuff in my iCloud drive, you can see I've got 1.9 gigabytes in there. If I wanted to clear that out, I can click here and I could toggle off iCloud Drive, or I can see apps that are syncing to iCloud Drive and I can turn some of those off, which they might be offenders that are saving lots of things to iCloud Drive and using up my storage space. But probably the two biggest culprits are going to be your Photos app that have all of your photos and videos that you've saved, and probably even your messages as well. You can see my messages has 26.3 gigabytes in it, and that's because I'll send videos to my wife, she'll send videos back of our kids and different stuff like that, and we have lots of videos that end up stored there. So if I want to minimize that, I can choose keep messages, and I could change that to 1 year, which means that it's only going to save the things from the last year, and anything that's older than a year it will go ahead and delete. But I look at iCloud storage as having backup that I don't have to worry about. For $1 a month, I can get 50 gigs of storage, which is probably enough for most individual users, and that means that all of my photos and videos, my text messages, some files and stuff like that are going to be backed up, and I don't have to worry about it. If I'm not backing up to iCloud, that means that I have to back up somewhere else manually, and if I don't remember to do that, then I have files and things that I can use if something happens to my phone, my Mac, or one of my other devices. Having ample iCloud storage also means that your files are going to be synced across your multiple devices, which I find highly useful. So that's going to do it for my Mac productivity tips. Some of these were very basic, and some of them may be something that you didn't know. Share down in the comments which tip you found to be most useful, and if you have one of your own, I'd love for you to share it there as well. Make sure to check out my course in the description, and if you found this video useful, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and I hope to see you back in another one soon. Take care.